Recording. Okay. Emily, so good to be back after a long time. We are back on YouTube and different channels.
We took a break and now we're here.
Yes, it's been a long time, but
We've
we are
grown.
back with some new content and we want to talk about faith. We had a lot of experiences throughout the last few months. So, what we should start with?
Suffering.
Oh, that's my favorite subject.
I have discovered the fruitfulness of suffering. I don't like suffering. Suffering's unavoidable. But I have seen how suffering, man, it helps things. And that's really frustrating to me. My little heart doesn't, my brain understands, kind of like how the blood of martyrs is the seed of the church. Well, sometimes when you suffer, things are actually fruitful because of it. My brain gets it and approves. My heart does not like it.
But so give me some examples. Like, how does it really helps you? Because that sounds like, suffering helps. Like that's kind of the contrary, right? Like, how does it help?
Um, what I have seen in my life is um, amazing ways that God will either speak through me or work through me to touch and open up the people around me in a way where I know it's the Lord. For example, I was talking with a mother and her daughter, and I was telling the daughter basically the story of Jesus. Now, they were both Catholic, but the daughter had never heard it in this way before. And the mother was just crying the entire time we were talking because it was hitting her, the mother. And the daughter was genuinely interested and was surprised because she had just never heard the story like that. And hearts that are open and receptive and I didn't actually even want to talk to them, uh, that day. I was coming in with not the best attitude. It wasn't a positive, I wasn't being mean, but it was just like, "Oh, okay, like, okay, here we go," kind of. And the Lord moved. So, and knowing that some of the ways that I have suffered and then have prayed and offered up that suffering has given God the opportunity, kind of it's an open door of he can then pour out grace through my own wound, onto those around me.
That's a beautiful story. So, how does it help your wounds? How does it heal you? That's a hard
Well,
phrase.
my wounds don't heal me, but the Lord's wounds heal me.
Yeah, but how do you see? I want to know, how do you see those wounds being healed in your life, like personal life?
One great example is being able to forgive people, actually, and realizing that I've forgiven them.
Mm.
That has been amazing. Being able to, have that pain in my heart over certain things for such a long amount of time. And then, like, I'm just going to use one particular instance and be very vague about it, but realizing that I can see that pain as a time of preparation. And it wasn't the other person's fault. It wasn't my fault. The two of us are at fault, frankly, because we're both sinners. We're not perfect. But both of us were able to, we both have a relationship with God. And because of that, we are able to have a genuine relationship again, despite the pain, um, and despite disagreements.
That's awesome. So how was your because you converted we know each other for like what, 5, 4.5 years?
Something
Something
like
like
that.
that.
Yeah.
And you converted like 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Right before we met.
Mhm.
So how do you see your transformation throughout the years? Like how did you change? How suffering shaped you in last 5 years?
Well, suffering brought me to God. That's true, actually. Um, because I didn't used to go to church at all. Baptized Catholic as a baby, didn't grow up in the faith, didn't know anything about God other than kind of what the world tells you, what TV or popular media would tell you about God, about faith, about church. So I didn't know anything. Um, and it wasn't until about 2017 that I had pain in my life, and God allowed me to really experience this pain. And that was when I realized that what the world had to offer me wasn't fulfilling. I was searching, seeking to fill up that pain, to drown that pain, to stuff that pain down with the things the world told me would heal it, but I just felt empty inside. So I lived near a church and I was like, well, might as well walk into one. I have nothing to lose. So God worked through the suffering because I had to be humble enough to be like, okay, like, let's walk in here. When I walked into the church for the first time, it was for a mass. I went to a mass, but I'd only gone to maybe like 5 masses in my entire life. So I had no idea. People were standing, sitting, kneeling, mumbling responses. I was like, "How does everybody know?" I was like, "What are they saying? I don't know what they are saying." And there's all mumbles. But even though I didn't understand what was happening at the mass, during that entire time, tears were just streaming down my face. Something was going on inside me, even though I wasn't 100% sure that I believed in God and I didn't understand w what was occurring. And these tears were not related to the pain that I had in my life that brought me there. It was separate. And to me, that was a healing and a purification of kind of all the stuff that was going on in my life. Conversion to God then from 2017, somehow God got me to commit to going to every Sunday mass. And when I was gonna stop going, it finally, because I went a couple times and I didn't know how to talk to anybody. And I was, I'd see people chatting after mass, and I'd feel shy and awkward. I'd be like, I want that, but I don't know what to do. And then I just walk home. I'd be like, okay, I'm going home. And then on the day that I decided, it was during mass, I was like, "Okay, I'm not coming back." I was like, I gave it a good shot. I'm not coming back." This guy that happened to be sitting next to me, like my age, after mass, he comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, do you come here often?" And for me, I was like, "Is this a pickup line?" I was like, "I am not prepared for this." And then he was like, "No, no, 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 no." He's like, "Do you want to get involved in stuff?" And then I felt much more comfortable. um, but God kept putting people like that to keep me committed to going every Sunday. But it was a slow catechesis. It wasn't an immediate conversion. I was trying to look around, learn, how do you be a young adult and be a Catholic, be a Christian? How do you go to church? And, how is this different from what I do now? But it wasn't until 2020 in the COVID lockdown when we lost Mass that I realized what I lost because I still didn't have a full understanding of the Mass at that point. But I remember watching a live stream Mass on my laptop in bed. And without any theological knowledge, my heart was like, there is something wrong. I was like, there's something missing. And it was at that moment where I had more suffering. I think everyone had suffering during the COVID lockdown, that I realized God is real. faith is important and I have to learn it now.
Wow. That's quite a story. And so what was next? Because I mean, we're just talking about 2020.
What was next?
No, I mean let's make it. You don't have we don't have to go through all details, but I'm kind of like I'm still looking for the change.
Right.
You
Yeah.
2020, you 2025. Like what
Yeah.
is the difference in your faith life, in your friendships, in your relationship with God? Like how do you see yourself different in 2025? And maybe you know where are you going? Are you see any direction you're going?
Yeah. Huge, huge difference. Huge flip. Uh, I feel like God has put me on a fast track where I have said yes to him and he's like, "Okay, we're going to catch you up on everything that you could have learned over the last however many years growing up, but now we're all going to do it right now." Um so since then, oh boy. Well, all right. Well, I'll go back. So before I started going to church, I was an actor. And my mom had recently reverted back to the faith, to being faithful, and she had started praying for me. And I do believe that part of my conversion was actually from a miraculous metal necklace that my mom had given me and I
Mm,
started wearing.
interesting.
But so before I started going to church, about a year before, I was an actor and I got cast on a TV show called The Exorcist. And I was cast as a nun. And my main lines were prayers, the Our Father, the Hail Mary, the Hail Holy Queen, and I didn't know them, and I needed to learn them for my job. And what was funny was I remember in that audition, after we did a group audition, so there were about 4 of us auditioning to be nuns because they were gonna cast a couple nuns. And I remember the casting director just looking at me after the audition, and I remember her face because I do feel like God, like, set that whole thing up. But I remember when I told my mom, she was kinda like it was, like, so weird for her because she's like, my daughter doesn't know anything about the faith, like, is this, like, what's happening? So, we fast forward, right? So now let's fast forward to 2021. I actually start discerning religious life. So if we're talking about where the flip was, I went through RCIA, and in that process, God was just unearthing all this stuff. Like, I was just watching everything I could online, reading everything I could about the faith because I knew absolutely nothing. And when that switch came, really what the switch was during COVID. At first, I was very, very afraid, and I was very, very afraid to die. But so I was staying inside, I wasn't going out. But a switch happened where I felt so alone and so empty. I was like, I would rather go outside in freedom and die knowing I lived for something than stay inside and survive for nothing. And that, I think, was the true moment of conversion because even though that had nothing to do with God, God's like, that's a martyr. If you put that to the faith, I would rather live my faith and be killed for it, whether that's a red martyr in blood or a white martyr daily, than survive, deny the truth, and live for nothing. Because once you deny the truth, what are you living for? So God took that, He opened my heart, and it changed the way my entire life looked. So I was discerning religious life because I felt this call to get to know God deeper. And I felt that He desired me to get to know Him deeper. And in my discernment, I realized that He was not calling me to that vocation, but through discerning religious life and through good spiritual directors, guides, mentors, I learned how to have a prayer life, how to talk to God. Because when you go through RCIA, it's kind of, you're receiving all this information. They talk about prayer, but there's no time with everything you need to learn in the Catholic faith. There's no way to cover it in 1 year. But because I immediately discerned religious life, I learned how to pray, which I think is the most important thing. If you daily show up to prayer with the Lord and talk to him from the heart, you will change. And everyone around you will see you change and will probably start to change themselves. And that is how my life now is completely different in terms of how I dress, how I speak, what I watch and listen to. Um, it's completely changed because now it's not my preferences that leads, it's the Lord. Is this pleasing to the Lord or not? Is this edifying? Is this bringing me up? Or will this lead me to sin and to do things that are harmful and destructive to myself or to others?
Wow. So God basically take you on like crazy ride. No seat belts, no
No seatbelt,
no brakes,
but he holds me in the palm of his hand, but there is no brakes.
full speeds. I love it. That's how God works basically. So what do you think? Of course, we cannot predict the future, but what do you think? Like, how do you keep growing in this relationship with God? How do you, what do you think is the goal? Where is the God leading you? Maybe you don't know, but how I think I guess like how do you nurture this beautiful relationship that basically changed your life?
Yeah, well, the goal is heaven,
That's it.
and I think it was Saint Elizabeth of the Trinity that pretty much realized that I think it was her, she found heaven on earth because God lives within her and God is heaven, right? So it's not just she's never alone. It's always Elizabeth and God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And those three persons of God are always with me and my guardian angel. And y- so remembering that when I feel alone and get depressed and get sad and start turning into myself, to remember I'm not alone. And I guess where is God leading me? I okay, if we're talking concrete, like, what does my life look like? I have no idea. That's what's exciting because each new day, if you say yes to God, is a true adventure and it's wild and sometimes it's stressful. But so I have no idea, right? God is a lamp to my feet, a light to my path. You don't get the map, you only get the very next step. But if we're talking about, okay, where is God leading me? He wants me to stop sinning. Right? And how do I stop sinning? By continuing to show up to prayer and asking for forgiveness immediately when I fall. Saint Therese of Lisieux was all about spiritual childhood. And she's like, little children fall all the time, but they don't get hurt because they're so very little. So I fall all of the time, but if I keep going back to God, if I confess my sins, if I say I'm sorry, if I get up and try again, I think it was Venerable Bruno Lanteri that said, "Nunc cepi," now I begin. Like if I were to sin 1,000 times, 100, like in a day, now I begin, nunc cepi. And that's where God is leading me to realize that I can do nothing, nothing, nothing without him because I still have a lot of pride and I still want to do a lot of things on my own because I think I know what I'm doing and that what I'm doing is right. And that is not it. So that's where God is leading me. He's leading me to a deeper union with himself. And I have been told that every deep desire, that deepest desire within your heart, is a promise that the Lord wants to fulfill. The deepest desires, right? If you just want, like a nice car, well, that's probably not the deepest desire of your heart, right? But what is that deepest desire? That's a promise. That desire for healing, for wholeness, for communion, that is a promise. And that is where God is leading me. Sometimes, kicking and screaming. Because what is the path? It's the way of the cross. It is the way of the cross. There's You can't get out of it. There is no easy way. It's the narrow way.
Thank you, Emily, for sharing. I mean, it's a beautiful story. And do you have any last few words for, anyone out there who is, suffering, maybe hopeless? Maybe they need some words of encouragement that, keep going on this path, which sometimes it's just, so hard and we feel alone. Is there anything you want to say to them?
You're not alone. There's always someone that will be there for you, even if it's not who you thought it should be, and that could be painful. So 1, you're not alone, but 2, you were made on purpose and for a purpose. The Lord knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. He loves you. And anything that has happened in your life that has been painful, the Lord wants to bring a greater good out of it. He can and He will open your heart to let Him work through the pain so that your pain can bring healing to others.
Thank you, Emily. Everyone who's watching us, thank you. And subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and we'll see you in the next one.